If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to the channel. Sharing it with your friends and family helps spread knowledge, and when we help others grow, we grow too. Thank you so much for listening. Let's dive into the podcast. Chapter 1: Money Stories We Tell Ourselves. Part 1: The Childhood Money Mirror. The money conversations you overheard as a 7-year-old child still echo in your financial decisions today. Recent research from Harvard Business School found that adults who witnessed their parents argue frequently about money were 45% more likely to experience anxiety when making large purchases, even decades later. These early impressions create invisible boundaries around our financial lives that we rarely recognize until we examine them closely. Consider Sarah Chen, a successful software engineer who discovered she was sabotaging her own financial success. Despite earning 6 figures, she lived paycheck to paycheck and refused to negotiate salary increases. During therapy, she recalled her immigrant parents' constant fear about money running out. Her father would count pennies at the kitchen table, muttering about being one paycheck away from disaster. Sarah had unconsciously adopted their scarcity mindset, believing that asking for more money would somehow tempt fate. Your childhood money memories operate like a hidden operating system, running background programs that influence every financial choice. Thomas Stanley, who studied millionaires for decades, noticed that many wealthy individuals could trace their frugal habits to specific childhood moments. One millionaire remembered his grandmother showing him how to save soap slivers, combining them into new bars. That lesson about waste became a lifelong principle of careful resource management. The opposite pattern emerges just as powerfully. Children who watched parents use shopping as emotional therapy often become adults who reach for their credit cards when stressed. Dr. Brad Klontz's research on financial psychology reveals that people who experienced financial trauma before age 6 typically develop one of 3 responses: extreme penny pinching, compulsive spending, or complete financial avoidance. Your parents' relationship with money became your first education about wealth, security, and worth. Did they whisper about bills in hushed, worried tones? Did they celebrate financial wins or dismiss them as luck? These early observations shaped your internal money dialogue before you even understood what money represented. The good news lies in recognition. Financial therapist Bari Tessler helps clients identify their money story by asking simple questions. What did your parents fight about regarding money? How did your family celebrate or handle financial stress? What messages did you absorb about rich people, poor people, or spending? Once these patterns surface, you can choose which inherited beliefs serve your current life and which ones need updating. A client who grew up believing good people don't want money realized this script was preventing her from charging appropriate rates for her consulting work. By acknowledging her childhood programming, she could consciously choose different beliefs that supported her adult financial goals. Your money story began in childhood, but you hold the pen to write its future chapters. Part 2: The Myth of Having Enough. Why do lottery winners go broke? Research from the National Endowment for Financial Education shows that roughly 70% of people who receive large windfalls lose it within a few years. The culprit isn't poor investment choices or bad luck. It's the moving goalpost of enough. What seemed like endless money suddenly feels insufficient when lifestyle expectations expand to match the new reality. The human brain operates with what psychologists call the hedonic treadmill. We adapt to improvements in our circumstances faster than we expect, constantly raising the bar for what constitutes satisfaction. A Harvard Business School study tracked people who received salary increases and found that within 6 months, their happiness levels returned to baseline despite having more money. The raise that once felt life-changing became the new normal, requiring an even bigger increase to generate the same excitement. Consider Sam Walton, founder of Walmart and once America's richest man. Despite his billions, he drove a 1979 Ford pickup truck and lived in the same modest house for decades. When asked why he didn't upgrade his lifestyle, Walton explained that he had already defined enough. Anything beyond basic comfort was simply excess that distracted from what mattered to him. He had broken free from society's endless upgrade cycle by consciously choosing his finish line. Most people operate differently. They tell themselves, I'll be happy when I earn $75,000, then $100,000, then $150,000. Each milestone feels close to satisfaction, yet arriving there reveals how arbitrary the target was. Dan Gilbert's research at Harvard demonstrates that we're remarkably poor at predicting what will make us happy, consistently overestimating how much pleasure future purchases will bring. The problem intensifies when we absorb cultural messages about success. Instagram feeds showcase exotic vacations and designer goods, creating artificial benchmarks for the good life. Marketing departments spend billions studying how to make their products feel essential rather than optional. A Toyota Camry becomes inadequate when commercials suggest successful people drive luxury sedans. Breaking this cycle requires honest self-examination. What does enough actually mean to you, independent of social expectations or marketing messages? Thomas Stanley's research on actual millionaires revealed that most live well below their means, not because they're cheap, but because they've defined their own standards rather than adopting society's. The most content people financially aren't necessarily the wealthiest. They're those who have consciously decided what constitutes enough for their unique circumstances and values. They've learned to distinguish between their needs and the endless wants that marketing and social pressure create. This isn't about living in deprivation, but about making intentional choices rather than chasing moving targets that promise satisfaction but rarely deliver it. Part 3. The Comparison Trap. When your neighbor pulls into their driveway with a gleaming new SUV, something primal awakens in your brain. Within seconds, you're mentally calculating payments, questioning your own 5-year-old sedan, and wondering if you're falling behind in life's invisible competition. This isn't weakness. It's hardwired human behavior that once helped us survive, but now threatens our financial well-being. Dan Ariely's research at Duke University demonstrated just how powerful this comparison instinct becomes. In his experiments, people consistently made irrational financial choices when given information about what others earned or owned. Participants who learned their salary was below average suddenly felt dissatisfied with compensation they'd previously considered adequate. The twist? Their actual purchasing power hadn't changed one bit. Consider the case of professional athletes who declare bankruptcy despite earning millions. Research by Sports Illustrated found that within 5 years of retirement, roughly 60% of NBA players face serious financial difficulties. The culprit isn't low income, it's comparison culture. When your teammates drive Lamborghinis, your Mercedes feels inadequate. When everyone owns multiple homes, your mansion seems modest. Social media amplifies this ancient tendency to devastating effect. Instagram doesn't show the credit card debt behind those vacation photos or the anxiety behind perfectly curated lifestyles. Ramit Sethi documented how his readers consistently overspent on visible items, cars, clothes, gadgets, while neglecting invisible investments like retirement accounts. They were performing wealth rather than building it. The comparison trap operates through what economists call reference points. Your satisfaction depends less on absolute wealth than relative position. A Harvard study found that people preferred earning $50,000, while others earned $25,000 over earning $100,000, while others earned $200,000. They literally chose to be poorer in absolute terms to feel richer relatively. Breaking free requires deliberate practice. Thomas Stanley's millionaire research revealed that wealthy individuals actively avoid comparison by choosing neighborhoods where their income falls in the middle range, not the bottom. They understand that upgrading their reference group would pressure them to upgrade their lifestyle accordingly. Start small but specific. Unfollow social media accounts that trigger spending urges. When tempted by someone else's purchase, pause and ask, what problem would this actually solve in my life? Often, the honest answer is none. The desire stems purely from comparison, not genuine need. Create your own scorecard. Warren Buffett famously ignores market comparisons, focusing instead on whether Berkshire Hathaway improved from the previous year. Apply this internally. Track your own financial progress against your past self, not your neighbors, colleagues, or social media connections. The goal isn't to stop noticing what others have. That's impossible. Instead, Recognize these comparison moments as signals to reconnect with your own values and definition of enough. Part 4. The Power of Small Choices. When behavioral economist Dan Ariely tracked MIT students' daily spending for 6 months, he discovered something remarkable. The average participant made 47 micro-financial decisions per day, yet could only recall making about 12. Those forgotten 35 choices, the extra guacamole, the premium shipping, the candy bar at checkout, collectively accounted for nearly 40% of their discretionary spending. This invisible spending represents one of the most powerful forces shaping our financial futures. Consider James, a software engineer who earned $85,000 annually, but wondered why his savings account remained stubbornly empty. When he began tracking every purchase for 30 days, the culprit emerged. Small conveniences totaling $847 monthly. The $4.50 daily coffee, $12 lunch deliveries instead of packed meals, $2.99 app subscriptions he'd forgotten about, and $15 ride shares when buses would suffice. None felt significant individually, yet they consumed nearly 12% of his take-home pay. The mathematics of small choices creates compound effects that most people underestimate. A $5 daily coffee habit costs $1,825 annually, enough for a vacation or emergency fund contribution. But the real power lies in opportunity cost. Invested at 7% annual returns, that same $5 daily becomes $95,000 over 20 years. The coffee itself isn't the problem. It's the unconscious nature of the decision. Research by Paco Underhill reveals why these micro-decisions slip past our awareness. Our brains categorize small purchases as below the consideration threshold, amounts too minimal to warrant careful evaluation. Retailers exploit this by positioning low-cost items strategically. Amazon's one-click purchasing removes friction from impulse buying, while subscription services hide recurring charges in the background of our financial lives. The millionaires studied by Thomas Stanley and William Danko demonstrated different patterns. They didn't necessarily earn more. They made different small choices consistently. Instead of $12 restaurant lunches, they brought sandwiches. Rather than buying coffee daily, they brewed at home. These weren't acts of deprivation, but conscious decisions about where their money created genuine value. Creating awareness around small choices requires practical systems. MIT professor Drazen Prelek found that people spend 12 to 18% less when using cash instead of cards because physical money creates psychological friction. The simple act of touching bills activates different neural pathways than swiping plastic. Try the 24-hour rule for non-essential purchases under $50. This brief pause often reveals whether desire stems from genuine need or momentary impulse. Ask yourself, will I remember wanting this item next week? Often, the answer is no. Small changes compound into transformation. When Ramit Sethi's readers eliminated one $15 weekly unnecessary purchase, they freed up $780 annually, money that could fund investment accounts, debt payments, or meaningful experiences. The secret isn't perfection, but awareness, turning unconscious spending into intentional choices that align with your deeper financial goals. Chapter 2. The Hidden Forces Behind Every Purchase. Part 1. Triggers and Temptations. When Oprah Winfrey famously confessed to buying 6 identical pairs of expensive boots because they made me feel powerful, she revealed a truth most of us recognize but rarely examine. Our emotions drive our wallets far more than our logic ever will. Research from Duke University shows that people spend 23% more when they're sad and 15% more when they're happy, proving that feelings, not financial sense, dictate our purchasing decisions. Target discovered this emotional spending pattern so precisely that they could predict when customers were pregnant based solely on their shopping habits. The company noticed expectant mothers bought unscented lotions around their second trimester and began purchasing supplements like calcium and zinc. By tracking these emotional life transitions, Target could send pregnancy-related coupons before women even announced their news to family. Think about your last unplanned purchase. Was it after a stressful day at work? During a celebration? Maybe while scrolling your phone feeling bored? These emotional states create spending triggers that retailers have spent billions studying and exploiting. Amazon's one-click purchasing emerged from understanding that emotional buyers want instant gratification without friction. The company found that even adding one extra step to checkout reduced impulse purchases by 25%. They designed their system to capture you at peak emotional vulnerability, right when you want something, before rational thought can intervene. Stress spending affects 68% of Americans, according to a 2023 American Psychological Association study. Sarah, a marketing executive from Denver, realized she was spending $400 monthly on clothes she never wore, always shopping after difficult client meetings. "I thought retail therapy was helping," she explained, "but I was just masking anxiety with credit card debt." The celebration trap catches us differently. Lottery winners often go bankrupt within 5 years, partly because they associate money with reward rather than responsibility. When good things happen, we feel entitled to spend. When bad things happen, we spend to feel better. Either way, marketers win. Boredom spending has exploded with smartphones. Instagram's shopping features and TikTok's product links capitalize on mindless scrolling. The average person checks their phone 96 times daily, creating 96 opportunities for impulse purchases during emotional lulls. Recognition becomes your first defense. Notice when you feel the urge to buy something unplanned. Ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? Often the answer isn't "I need this item," but rather "I'm tired," "I'm anxious," or "I deserve something nice." Create a pause protocol. Wait 24 hours for purchases over $50, 1 week for anything over $200. This simple delay allows emotional intensity to fade and rational thinking to emerge. Keep a list of items you want, but don't immediately buy. Revisit it monthly. You'll be surprised how many things lose their appeal. Your spending triggers are as unique as your fingerprint, but awareness transforms them from hidden weaknesses into manageable patterns. The goal isn't eliminating all emotional purchases, but choosing them consciously, rather than falling victim to them repeatedly. Part 2. The Art of the Nudge. When Amazon changed its checkout process in 2009 by introducing one-click purchasing, sales increased by 39% within the first year. This wasn't magic. It was the power of a carefully designed nudge that made spending easier than thinking. What Amazon discovered is something behavioral economist Richard Thaler calls choice architecture. The way options are presented shapes what we choose, often without us realizing it. Think of nudges as invisible hands guiding your decisions. When Whole Foods places organic produce at eye level and processed foods near the floor, they're nudging you toward healthier choices. When Netflix automatically plays the next episode, they're nudging you to keep watching. These subtle environmental changes don't force your hand, but they make certain choices feel more natural or convenient. The grocery industry has perfected this science. Studies show that items placed at checkout increase impulse purchases by 23%. Why do you think candy bars live there instead of vegetables? The placement creates a final moment of weakness when your decision-making energy is already depleted from shopping. Your tired brain defaults to the easiest choice: grab something sweet. Online retailers use digital nudges with surgical precision. Ever notice how shopping websites show only 3 left in stock or display recently viewed items in your sidebar? These aren't accidents. They're manufactured urgency and visual reminders designed to convert browsing into buying. The red countdown timer on sale items triggers our fear of missing out, making us act faster than we normally would. But here's where it gets interesting. You can flip this psychology to work for you instead of against you. Smart spenders create their own positive nudges. Sarah, a teacher from Portland, moved her credit cards to a drawer upstairs and kept only cash in her wallet. This tiny friction, having to climb stairs to overspend, reduced her impulse purchases by 60%. Design your environment to support better choices. Keep a water bottle visible if you want to drink more water. Hide your credit cards if you want to spend less. Place bills in obvious spots if you want to pay them on time. These self-imposed nudges work because they acknowledge a simple truth. Willpower is limited, but environmental design is powerful. The most effective personal nudges involve making good choices easier and bad choices harder. Set up automatic transfers to savings. Delete shopping apps from your phone. Keep a 24-hour rule for non-essential purchases over $50. These small barriers give your rational mind time to catch up with your emotional impulses. Default options carry tremendous weight in financial decisions. Companies know this. That's why gym memberships auto-renew and subscription services start with premium plans selected. You can harness this same principle. Make saving money your default by automating it, and make spending money require conscious effort. The goal isn't to eliminate all spontaneous purchases, but to ensure they align with your actual values rather than clever marketing psychology. When you understand how nudges work, you stop being their victim and start being their architect. Part 3. Retail's Secret Language. Walk into any Target or Best Buy, and you're entering a carefully orchestrated psychological theater designed to separate you from your money. That vanilla scent wafting through the air isn't accidental. It's pumped through the ventilation system because research shows vanilla makes people more likely to make impulsive purchases. Paco Underhill spent decades following shoppers with stopwatches and clipboards, discovering that stores slow down your walking pace by 18% when they play music at 72 beats per minute rather than 108. Slower shoppers spend more money. Victoria's Secret uses this principle religiously, combining soft lighting with carefully timed playlists that mirror your resting heart rate. Color psychology runs deeper than most people realize. McDonald's red and yellow color scheme isn't just branding. Red triggers urgency, while yellow stimulates appetite. Whole Foods bathes their produce in warm lighting to make vegetables appear fresher, while Costco deliberately uses harsh warehouse lighting to signal low prices through environmental cues. Product placement follows mathematical precision. Eye-level shelves generate 35% more sales than bottom shelves, which is why generic brands get relegated to ankle height. Grocery stores place milk at the back corner, forcing you to walk past thousands of other products. Amazon's one-click purchasing removes friction between desire and purchase, while their recommendation algorithms create artificial scarcity with phrases like, "only 3 left in stock." The scarcity principle exploits our fear of missing out. When Hotels.com shows only 2 rooms left, or when flash sales count down from arbitrary timers, they're triggering ancient survival instincts that equate scarcity with value. J. Crew mastered this by introducing final sale items that were never actually full price to begin with. Social proof manipulates through fake popularity. Bestseller tags and customer review counts influence purchases more than the actual reviews themselves. Netflix shows trending now content that isn't necessarily trending but needs more viewers to justify production costs. Retailers also exploit what behavioral economists call anchoring. Williams-Sonoma introduced a $429 bread maker that barely sold until they added a $579 model. Suddenly, the $429 option seemed reasonable by comparison, and sales doubled. Apple uses this when launching new iPhones. The $1,200 model makes the $800 version feel like a bargain. Your defense starts with awareness. Before entering any store, ask yourself what you actually need versus what the environment might convince you to want. Shop with a list and stick to it. When you feel sudden urgency to buy something, step away for 24 hours. Most impulse purchases lose their appeal once you leave the carefully crafted environment designed to create that desire. Online shopping requires different defenses. Clear your browser's autofill payment information to create friction. Unsubscribe from promotional emails that manufacture urgency. Question whether you're buying the product or the feeling the marketing promised. The goal isn't to become immune to all retail psychology. That's impossible. Instead, recognize when these techniques are working on you and pause long enough to make conscious choices rather than automatic responses. Part 4. The Emotional Receipt. When Sarah walked out of the Apple Store clutching her new iPhone, she felt electric. The sleek device promised connection, productivity, and status. But 3 weeks later, staring at her credit card statement, a familiar weight settled in her chest. The purchase that once sparked joy now triggered anxiety. This emotional whiplash happens to millions of people daily, yet we rarely examine the psychological aftermath of our spending choices. Psychologist Tim Kasser's research at Knox College revealed a startling truth. People who derive happiness from material purchases experience diminishing returns far faster than those who invest in experiences or relationships. The shopping high Sarah felt lasted roughly 14 minutes according to studies tracking post-purchase emotions. The financial stress, however, lingered for months. This pattern explains why lottery winners often report lower happiness levels 2 years after their windfall. They discover what researchers call hedonic adaptation, our remarkable ability to return to baseline happiness levels regardless of material gains. The new car smell fades, the designer handbag becomes just another bag, the emotional receipt shows a net loss. Consumer psychologist Kit Yarrow documented this phenomenon by following shoppers for 30 days after major purchases. The participants who bought items to fill emotional voids, loneliness, stress, inadequacy, consistently reported buyer's remorse within a week. Conversely, those who purchased items that served clear, practical purposes maintained satisfaction longer. Dave Ramsey observed similar patterns among his radio show callers. People called seeking debt advice, but their stories revealed deeper emotional transactions. They weren't just buying products, they were attempting to purchase confidence, love, or acceptance. The emotional receipt always came due. Consider examining your recent purchases through this lens. What emotion were you hoping to buy? Did the purchase deliver that feeling? How long did it last? This analysis isn't about judgment. It's about understanding your emotional spending patterns. Financial advisor Suze Orman suggests treating post-purchase regret as valuable data rather than personal failure. Each emotional receipt teaches something about your triggers, values, and authentic sources of satisfaction. The woman who regrets expensive dinners might discover she values security over social status. The man who feels guilty about his workshop tools might realize he's investing in a meaningful hobby. Transform these insights into wisdom by creating what behavioral economist Richard Thaler calls implementation intentions. Before major purchases, ask yourself, what emotion am I hoping this will provide? Then identify 3 non-material ways to address that same need. This practice doesn't eliminate spending. It ensures your money serves your genuine well-being, rather than fleeting impulses. The goal isn't perfect financial decisions, but conscious ones. Each emotional receipt becomes a teacher, guiding you towards spending that truly aligns with your values and long-term happiness. Chapter 3. Breaking the Spend-Save Cycle. Part 1. Recognizing the pattern. Watch someone at a grocery store for 5 minutes, and you'll witness the spend-save cycle in full display. The woman who grabs organic everything, then panics at checkout and puts half the items back. The man who fills his cart with sale items he doesn't need, feeling triumphant about saving money he shouldn't have spent. These aren't random behaviors. They're predictable patterns that researchers have documented across millions of financial decisions. Dr. Dan Ariely's experiments at MIT revealed something fascinating about our financial habits. We don't just spend money once. We rehearse the same spending scenarios over and over, like actors trapped in a play we can't escape. His studies showed that people who overspend on Monday often follow an identical emotional sequence by Friday. Initial excitement, buyer's remorse, a promise to do better, then repeat. The cycle typically begins with what psychologists call the anticipation high. Your brain releases dopamine not when you buy something, but when you imagine buying it. This explains why browsing Amazon at midnight feels so compelling. The anticipation creates a chemical reward that your brain wants to repeat, regardless of whether the purchase actually improves your life. Consider Sarah, a marketing manager from Portland, who tracked her spending patterns for 6 months. She discovered that every stressful work week triggered the same sequence. Online shopping Tuesday night, package arrival euphoria Thursday, credit card anxiety the following Monday, then a strict budget that lasted exactly 11 days. Her pattern was so consistent, she could predict her bank balance based on her work schedule. The crash follows predictably. Research from the Journal of Consumer Psychology found that 87% of people experience buyer's remorse within 24 hours of non-essential purchases over $50. This isn't random guilt, it's your rational brain catching up to your emotional brain's decisions. The stress hormones that flood your system during this phase often drive people toward one of 2 extremes: complete spending freezes or revenge spending to numb the discomfort. What makes these cycles particularly stubborn is their emotional logic. Spending provides temporary relief from stress, anxiety, or boredom. Saving provides temporary relief from financial anxiety, but neither addresses the underlying emotional trigger. so the cycle continues. Ramit Sethi's research showed that people who successfully break spending cycles don't rely on willpower. They first map their personal patterns with forensic detail. The most eye-opening exercise involves tracking not just what you buy, but your emotional state before each purchase. Were you tired, stressed, celebrating, bored? Dr. Morgan Housel's analysis of spending behavior found that people who identified their emotional triggers were 73% more likely to change their financial habits than those who only tracked dollar amounts. Your spending pattern is as unique as your fingerprint, but it follows predictable rules. The key to change isn't shame about past decisions. It's developing the detective skills to see your own patterns clearly. Once you recognize the cycle, you can begin to interrupt it. Part 2. From Impulse to Intention. When Kelly noticed her credit card statement showing 3 coffee shop visits in one afternoon, she realized something profound. Her spending wasn't about coffee at all. The barista knew her name, the environment felt safe, and each purchase provided a brief escape from work stress. This moment of recognition became her turning point from reactive spending to intentional choice-making. The space between wanting something and buying it holds extraordinary power. Research from Duke University shows that people who implement a 24-hour waiting period reduce impulse purchases by 64%. But the magic isn't in the timing, it's in what happens during that pause. Sarah Chen, a marketing executive from Portland, started texting herself photos of items she wanted instead of buying them immediately. 6 months later, she discovered she'd forgotten about 80% of those items entirely. Creating this intentional gap requires practical systems, not willpower alone. Amazon's Save for Later button accidentally became one of the most effective spending interventions ever created. When items sit in that digital wish list, the initial emotional charge fades, allowing rational thinking to return. Many users report that items they desperately wanted seem less appealing after a few days of reflection. The pause technique works because it interrupts what behavioral economists call hot states, moments when emotions override logic. Dr. Dan Ariely's experiments revealed that people make dramatically different financial decisions when they're emotionally activated compared to when they're calm. A simple question like, "Will I still want this next week?" can shift your brain from emotional to analytical processing. Real transformation happens when you replace automatic behaviors with conscious choice points. James Clear documented how habit researcher B.J. Fogg transformed his own spending by asking 3 questions before any non-essential purchase. Do I need this now? Does this align with my values? What else could this money accomplish? This framework helped Fogg reduce his annual discretionary spending by 40% while feeling more satisfied with his purchases. The most successful people don't eliminate all spontaneous purchases. They redirect that energy toward intentional decisions. Maria Gonzalez, a teacher from Chicago, keeps a joy fund specifically for unplanned purchases that truly spark excitement. By giving herself permission to spend within defined boundaries, she eliminated the guilt-regret cycle that previously triggered even more spending. Your brain craves the dopamine hit from acquisition, but research shows the anticipation of a purchase often provides more pleasure than the purchase itself. Creating systems that honor this psychological reality, like wish lists, waiting periods, or spending rules, doesn't deny your desires. Instead, it ensures your money flows toward choices that genuinely enhance your life rather than simply satisfying momentary impulses. Part 3. Rewriting your money script. Your childhood relationship with money began before you could even count. Psychologist Brad Klotz's research reveals that most adults operate from financial scripts written by age 7, when we absorbed messages about scarcity, abundance, and worthiness through family conversations and behaviors we witnessed. These early narratives become the invisible operating system driving every purchase decision, often decades later. Consider the story of Sarah, a marketing executive who discovered she was unconsciously replicating her mother's pattern of buying expensive clothes after stressful days. Her script read, "When life gets hard, you deserve something beautiful." This seemed harmless until she calculated spending $18,000 annually on retail therapy while carrying credit card debt. The revelation came during a financial counseling session when she realized her purchases weren't bringing joy. They were bandaging emotional wounds with temporary fixes. Your money script contains 3 elements: core beliefs about money's meaning, emotional triggers that activate spending, and the stories you tell yourself to justify financial choices. Behavioral economist Dan Ariely's studies show that people consistently act against their stated financial goals when these unconscious scripts take control. The antidote isn't willpower, it's rewriting the underlying narrative. Start by examining your earliest money memories. What did your family communicate about spending, saving, and success? Rachel Cruz, who works extensively with financial behavior, found that children from families who argued about money often developed scripts equating spending with conflict, leading to either extreme frugality or rebellious overspending in adulthood. The rewriting process requires specific techniques. Write down your current money beliefs, then challenge each one with evidence. If you believe, "I work hard, so I deserve expensive things," examine whether this belief serves your larger goals. Replace limiting scripts with empowering alternatives. "I work hard, so I deserve financial freedom and choices." Visualization proves remarkably effective for script revision. Olympic athletes use mental rehearsal to improve performance, and the same principle applies to financial behavior. Spend 5 minutes daily visualizing yourself making spending decisions aligned with your values, choosing experiences over objects, or feeling confident saying no to unnecessary purchases. Building supportive networks accelerates script change. Thomas Stanley's research on millionaires revealed they often surrounded themselves with others who shared similar financial values. Join groups focused on intentional living or financial goals, where your new script receives social reinforcement rather than judgment. Self-forgiveness becomes essential during this transformation. Perfectionism often triggers old scripts when you inevitably make mistakes. Instead of viewing setbacks as failures, treat them as data points, opportunities to refine your new narrative and strengthen your commitment to conscious financial choices. Your rewritten script should inspire action rather than restrict it. Frame your new story around what you're moving toward: financial freedom, meaningful experiences, or peace of mind, rather than what you're avoiding. This positive orientation creates sustainable motivation for the choices ahead. Part 4. The Joy of Skipping. When Oprah Winfrey turned down a $3 million endorsement deal in the 1990s because it didn't align with her values, she demonstrated something revolutionary about wealth building. The real power isn't in what you buy, it's in what you choose not to buy. Research from MIT's Dan Ariely reveals that our brains release the same dopamine hit when we resist a purchase as when we make one. The key difference? The satisfaction from saying no actually lasts longer. While buyer's remorse sets in hours after a purchase, the pride from exercising restraint compounds over time. Consider Warren Buffett's approach to luxury. Despite his billions, he still lives in the same modest Omaha home he bought in 1958 for $31,500. When asked why he doesn't upgrade, Buffett explains that every dollar spent on unnecessary items is a dollar that can't compound over decades. His skipping strategy has generated returns that no luxury purchase could match. The psychology behind successful skipping starts with reframing the narrative. Instead of thinking, "I can't afford this," wealthy individuals think, "I'm choosing something better." Thomas Stanley's research on millionaires found that 94% regularly ask themselves, "Will this purchase move me closer to financial independence?" before buying anything over $100. This shift transforms skipping from deprivation into empowerment. Vicki Robin, author of Your Money or Your Life, describes it as trading life energy wisely. When you calculate that a $200 impulse purchase represents 20 hours of work after taxes, the decision becomes clearer. You're not missing out, you're reclaiming time. Practical skipping strategies work best when they feel like games rather than restrictions. Ramit Sethi suggests the 24-hour rule for purchases over $50, but successful skippers often extend this to a week or month. They create maybe later lists instead of buying immediately. Behavioral economist Richard Thaler found that 80% of items on these lists lose their appeal within 2 weeks. The social aspect proves equally important. Sarah Blakely, Spanx founder, credits her wealth to learning the joy of saying no to peer pressure purchases in her 20s. She discovered that friends respected her boundaries more than her belongings. Her no shopping challenge friends now celebrate skipping victories together, creating positive social reinforcement for smart choices. Physical strategies amplify psychological ones. Remove shopping apps from your phone. Unsubscribe from retailer emails. Leave credit cards at home during casual outings. These environmental changes reduce what behavioral economists call friction, the effort required to make poor choices. The most successful skippers celebrate their victories. They track money not spent alongside money saved. They visualize their bigger goals, whether a debt-free life, early retirement, or meaningful experiences, and connect each skipped purchase to those dreams. The joy of skipping isn't about becoming a minimalist hermit. It's about becoming selective, intentional, and ultimately more satisfied with both your purchases and your savings. Every time you skip something unnecessary, you're choosing something better. Chapter 4, Growing Wealth, Growing Wisdom. Part 1, The Beauty of Boring Habits. Warren Buffett once said his wealth came from two things: compound interest and time. What he didn't mention was the third ingredient that made it all possible: mind-numbing repetition. While financial gurus promise exotic strategies and hot stock tips, the billionaire from Omaha built his fortune through habits so ordinary they could cure insomnia. Consider the janitor Ronald Read, who died in 2014 leaving behind $8 million. Read never earned more than $20,000 annually, yet he consistently bought dividend-paying stocks for decades. He drove the same car for years, lived in the same modest house, and reinvested every dividend payment. His strategy was breathtakingly boring, and it worked spectacularly. The beauty of mundane financial habits lies in their invisibility to our emotional brain. When you automate $200 monthly into an index fund, there's no adrenaline rush, no story to tell at dinner parties. Your primitive mind, always scanning for immediate threats and rewards, simply ignores this activity. This indifference becomes your greatest asset. Research from Harvard Business School shows that people who automate their savings accumulate 15% more wealth over 20 years compared to those who manually transfer money. The automated savers avoid the daily mental negotiations that derail good intentions. They sidestep the voice that whispers, "Just this once, let's skip the investment and buy something fun." Track your expenses, and you'll discover something remarkable. Awareness alone changes behavior. A University of Southern California study found that people who simply recorded their purchases reduced unnecessary spending by 23% within 3 months. They didn't set strict budgets or eliminate categories entirely. They just paid attention. This mirrors what happens when you step on a scale daily. The number itself doesn't make you lighter, but the consistent feedback creates subtle course corrections. You might walk instead of drive, choose salad over fries, or take the stairs. Small adjustments compound into significant changes. The most successful wealth builders embrace what researchers call satisficing rather than maximizing. Instead of hunting for the perfect investment opportunity, they choose good enough options and stick with them. They buy broad market index funds rather than researching individual stocks. They open high-yield savings accounts instead of chasing the highest rates across multiple banks. This approach frustrates our achievement-oriented culture. We celebrate the entrepreneur who risks everything on a startup, not the teacher who maxes out her 403(b) every year. Yet data from The Millionaire Next Door reveals that 80% of millionaires are first-generation wealthy, and most built their fortunes through consistent saving and investing in boring assets. The magic happens in the margins. During unremarkable Tuesday afternoons when you automatically transfer money you'll never miss. These invisible moments, repeated thousands of times, create financial transformation that feels almost accidental. Your future self will thank you for choosing predictable progress over exciting gambles. Part 2. Making Wealth Personal. When billionaire Warren Buffett drives his 2014 Cadillac XTS to work each morning, he's practicing something most financial advice completely misses: wealth that fits his actual life, not someone else's definition of success. Your financial journey belongs to you alone. This sounds obvious, yet countless people chase strategies that worked for their neighbor, their boss, or some influencer online. They adopt investment approaches designed for different risk tolerances, savings rates that ignore their family obligations, or spending restrictions that clash with their core values. The result? Financial plans that crumble under real-world pressure. Consider two teachers from the same school district. Sarah maximizes her retirement contributions and lives in a modest apartment, finding deep satisfaction in watching her investment accounts grow. Her colleague Mike chooses a larger house in a better school district, reasoning that his children's education represents his best investment. Both teachers earn identical salaries, yet their wealth-building strategies look completely different. Neither approach is wrong because each aligns with their personal definition of a life well lived. Research from The Millionaire Next Door reveals that 80% of wealthy individuals built their fortunes in ways that matched their personalities and circumstances. The extroverted millionaire might invest in businesses where relationships matter. The analytical type gravitates toward index funds and spreadsheets. The risk-averse accumulates wealth through real estate and bonds. Success isn't about copying someone else's blueprint. It's about understanding what motivates you personally. Your values act as your financial compass. If family time matters most, expensive vacations might bring more joy than a larger investment account. If security drives your decisions, keeping more cash available makes sense even if it means lower returns. If adventure calls to you, budgeting for experiences rather than material goods creates lasting satisfaction. The financial media promotes universal solutions because complexity doesn't sell magazines. Everyone should invest in index funds makes a better headline than your investment strategy depends on your age, risk tolerance, family situation, career stability, and personal temperament. Yet the messy, personalized approach actually works. Before adopting any financial strategy, ask yourself 3 questions. Does this match how I naturally think about money? Can I maintain this approach during stressful periods? Will this help me achieve what I actually want from life? Ramit Sethi discovered this when he stopped trying to convince everyone to cut their coffee purchases. Some people find genuine joy in expensive coffee and can afford it within their overall financial plan. Others prefer investing that money and drinking cheaper alternatives. Both choices can lead to wealth when they align with personal values and circumstances. Your money story should reflect your authentic self, not someone else's vision of financial success. Start there and build everything else around what truly matters to you. Part 3: Slow and Steady Wins. When Warren Buffett was asked about his investment strategy, he famously replied that his favorite holding period is forever. This wasn't just clever marketing. It reflected a fundamental truth about wealth building that most people struggle to accept. In our age of instant gratification and get-rich-quick schemes, the most powerful financial strategy remains maddeningly simple. Time plus consistency equals extraordinary results. Consider the story of Ann Scheiber, a retired IRS auditor who died in 1995 with a $22 million portfolio. Her secret wasn't insider trading or brilliant stock picks. She simply invested $5,000 in blue-chip stocks in 1944 and reinvested every dividend for 50 years. While her colleagues chased hot tips and market timing strategies, Scheiber quietly compounded her wealth through decades of patient investing. Her approach seemed boring compared to the flashy investment schemes of her era, yet it delivered results that would make any hedge fund manager envious. The mathematics of compound growth reveal why patience beats speed in wealth building. Albert Einstein allegedly called compound interest the 8th wonder of the world, and the numbers support this reverence. A person who invests $200 monthly, starting at age 25, will accumulate more wealth by retirement than someone who invests $800 monthly, starting at age 45, assuming identical returns. The difference isn't intelligence or income. It's simply time in the market versus timing the market. Thomas Stanley's research in The Millionaire Next Door documented this principle across thousands of wealthy Americans. The typical millionaire didn't achieve wealth through lottery tickets or cryptocurrency windfalls. Instead, they consistently saved 15 to 20% of their income, lived below their means, and invested in simple, diversified portfolios. These individuals often drove used cars, lived in modest homes, and avoided lifestyle inflation as their incomes grew. Their wealth accumulated through what Stanley called economic discipline rather than spectacular investment returns. The challenge lies in our psychological wiring. Behavioral economist Richard Thaler demonstrated through his research that humans systematically undervalue future rewards compared to immediate gratification. We'll choose $50 today over $100 in a year, even though waiting provides a guaranteed 100% return. This tendency, called present bias, explains why so many people struggle with saving, despite understanding its importance intellectually. Dave Ramsey built his financial empire teaching people to overcome this bias through what he calls baby steps. His approach involves paying off debts smallest to largest, regardless of interest rates, because small victories create momentum for larger challenges. Critics argue this isn't mathematically optimal, but Ramsey's method recognizes that personal finance is more personal than finance. Behavioral change requires emotional wins, not just numerical efficiency. The most successful wealth builders create systems that make patience easier. They automate their savings, making good decisions before willpower can interfere. They focus on increasing income rather than perfecting investment allocation, understanding that earning more money typically impacts wealth more than squeezing extra percentage points from portfolio optimization. Building wealth slowly isn't just about money. It's about developing the character traits that sustain long-term success. Patience, discipline, and delayed gratification serve you well beyond your bank account. They become the foundation for lasting happiness and genuine security in an uncertain world. Part 4. Generosity and Gratitude. When Warren Buffett decided to give away 99% of his wealth, he discovered something unexpected. The more he gave, the richer he felt. This paradox challenges everything we think we know about money and satisfaction, yet research consistently shows that generous people report higher levels of happiness and feel more financially secure than their peers. The relationship between giving and wealth operates through mechanisms that seem to defy logic. Harvard Business School professor Michael Norton conducted studies where participants received envelopes containing either $5 or $20, with instructions to spend the money either on themselves or others. Those who spent money on others consistently reported higher happiness levels by evening, regardless of the amount. The act of giving triggered neural pathways associated with reward and pleasure, creating what researchers call a helper's high. Consider the case of Melinda French Gates, who transformed her approach to wealth after witnessing extreme poverty during international travels. Rather than viewing money as a finite resource to hoard, she began seeing it as a tool for connection and impact. This shift didn't diminish her financial acumen. It enhanced it by providing clear purpose and reducing anxiety about money decisions. Gratitude operates as giving's companion, reshaping our perception of what we already possess. Studies by psychologist Robert Emmons show that people who maintain gratitude journals spend 15% less on impulse purchases compared to control groups. When we recognize abundance in our current situation, the compulsive need to acquire diminishes naturally. The scarcity mindset that drives overspending often stems from a fundamental misunderstanding about wealth's true nature. Money, like energy, flows rather than stagnates. Those who give strategically, whether through charitable donations, helping family members, or supporting causes they believe in, create circulation that often returns in unexpected forms. Stronger relationships, business opportunities, or simply the confidence that comes from knowing you can afford to be generous. Practical integration starts small but consistent. Set aside 1% of your income for giving, treating it as seriously as any other financial commitment. Practice gratitude by acknowledging 3 financial positives each week. Perhaps the ability to buy groceries without checking your balance, or having emergency savings that provide peace of mind. This approach transforms money from a source of anxiety into a tool for connection. Instead of asking, "How can I get more?" you begin asking, "How can I use what I have meaningfully?" The shift creates emotional distance from financial stress while building the kind of character that sustains long-term wealth. Generous people don't give because they're wealthy. They often become wealthy because they give. The practices of gratitude and generosity develop patience, perspective, and purpose that naturally align with sound financial decisions. They create abundance thinking that leads to better opportunities and more sustainable spending habits. Chapter 5. The Journey Ahead. Part 1. Learning from Fails and Wins. Every morning, Warren Buffett's father would tell young Warren about the day he lost his family's savings during the Great Depression, not as a source of shame, but as the most valuable education he could offer. This single story shaped one of history's greatest investors more than any textbook ever could. Your financial mistakes aren't character flaws. They're expensive tuition payments in a school where everyone learns differently. Consider how many successful people built their fortunes on the ashes of spectacular failures. Walt Disney's first animation company went bankrupt, leaving him sleeping on newspaper in a friend's garage. What separated him from those who never recovered wasn't avoiding failure. It was treating each setback as data rather than judgment. The human brain processes financial loss differently than other types of setbacks. Research by behavioral economist Daniel Kahneman shows we feel the pain of losing money twice as intensely as the pleasure of gaining it. This biological response explains why your worst spending decisions haunt you long after your best ones fade from memory. But here's what most people miss. That intense emotional response actually makes failures more instructive than successes. When Target's credit card data breach cost them over $200 million, CEO Greg Steinhafel didn't just apologize and move on. The company hired cybersecurity experts, rebuilt their entire payment system, and created new protocols that became industry standards. They transformed their most expensive mistake into competitive advantage. Your overspending on that vacation or the investment that went sideways contains similar potential if you're willing to examine what really happened. The most financially successful people Morgan Housel studied for The Psychology of Money shared one trait. They viewed money mistakes as research, not failure. They asked better questions. Instead of "why am I so bad with money?" they wondered, what environmental factors made that decision feel logical at the time? This shift from self-criticism to curiosity changes everything. Your past financial decisions made perfect sense given your information, emotions, and circumstances at that moment. The college student who accumulated credit card debt wasn't being reckless. They were responding to immediate needs with limited options. The retiree who panicked and sold stocks during a market crash wasn't being foolish. They were protecting what felt like their lifeline. Real wisdom comes from recognizing these patterns without judgment. Ramit Sethi discovered that his biggest money mistakes happened when he felt rushed or emotionally charged. Now he builds waiting periods into major financial decisions. Your patterns are different, but they exist. Maybe you overspend when lonely or make poor investment choices when feeling behind peers. These insights become your early warning system. The goal isn't perfection, it's progress. Each mistake teaches you something about your money personality that success never could. Those lessons compound just like interest, creating better decisions tomorrow. Your financial story isn't defined by individual chapters of loss or gain. It's shaped by how thoughtfully you turn each page. Part 2. Keeping money in perspective. When Warren Buffett's mentor, Benjamin Graham, died in 1976, he left behind an estate worth approximately $3 million, modest by today's billionaire standards, yet representing a life of profound contentment. Graham could have accumulated far more, but he understood something that eludes many high achievers. Money's true purpose isn't accumulation, but freedom to live according to your values. This perspective shift changes everything about how we approach financial decisions. Consider the story of John Bogle, founder of Vanguard Group. Despite building a financial empire, Bogle lived in the same modest Philadelphia suburb home for decades, drove used cars, and famously said his greatest luxury was time with family. He recognized that beyond meeting genuine needs, additional wealth often creates more problems than solutions. Research by psychologist Tim Kasser reveals that people who prioritize financial success above relationships and personal growth report higher levels of anxiety and depression. The hedonic treadmill effect explains why lottery winners return to baseline happiness levels within months, while people who focus on intrinsic goals, meaningful work, relationships, personal development, maintain higher life satisfaction over time. The key lies in establishing what researchers call enough. In Japan, this concept appears in the term ikigai, life's purpose. Toyota heir Akio Toyoda could live lavishly but chooses simplicity, focusing energy on company mission rather than personal consumption. He understands that excessive focus on wealth accumulation can become a form of golden handcuffs, trapping us in pursuits that drain rather than energize. Morgan Housel observes that money's greatest value isn't buying expensive things, but purchasing options, the ability to work less, spend time with loved ones, or pursue meaningful projects without financial pressure. This reframe transforms budgeting from deprivation to empowerment. Practical boundaries help maintain this perspective. Set specific times for financial planning rather than constant money monitoring. Author Ramit Sethi recommends automating investments and bill payments, then consciously ignoring day-to-day market fluctuations. This approach prevents the obsessive checking that turns healthy financial awareness into anxiety-inducing fixation. Remember that your financial journey serves broader life goals. When facing major money decisions, ask, how does this choice support what I truly value? Sometimes the mathematically optimal decision isn't the right one for your overall well-being. A slightly lower-paying job with better work-life balance might serve you better than maximizing salary at the expense of health or relationships. The most financially successful people often display what appears to be indifference toward money itself. They've learned that treating money as a tool rather than a scorecard creates both better financial outcomes and richer lives. Your wealth should serve your story, not become the entire plot. Part 3. Passing on better money stories. Your children watch every financial decision you make, absorbing lessons you never intended to teach. Research from the University of Cambridge shows that money habits are formed by age 7, making your daily choices more influential than any formal financial education you might provide later. Warren Buffett understood this principle profoundly. Rather than lecturing his children about investing, he simply lived his values. His son Peter recalls how his father would clip coupons and drive the same modest car for decades, demonstrating that wealth doesn't require constant displays of spending. This quiet modeling proved more powerful than any financial seminar. The stories we inherit about money often come wrapped in silence. Many families never discuss financial struggles or successes, leaving children to decode cryptic messages from overheard conversations and observed behaviors. When parents stress about bills behind closed doors but maintain cheerful facades, children learn that money equals anxiety and secrecy. Breaking these cycles requires intentional transparency. Sarah Williams, a financial counselor from Detroit, transformed her family's money story after her own bankruptcy in 2008. Instead of hiding her mistakes, she openly discussed them with her teenage daughter, explaining how emotional spending had led to debt and what she was learning about budgeting. Years later, her daughter entered college with sophisticated financial awareness that helped her avoid student loan debt. Consider the compound effect of these conversations. When you share why you comparison shop or explain your decision to save rather than upgrade immediately, you're depositing wisdom that compounds across generations. These moments don't require formal lessons or dramatic revelations. Simple transparency about trade-offs and values creates lasting impact. The most transformative money stories often emerge from communities rather than individuals. In Kiva's microlending program, entire villages watch as one person's small business loan transforms into community prosperity. These success stories spread organically, inspiring neighbors to pursue their own financial growth while understanding that individual prosperity strengthens collective well-being. Your influence extends beyond immediate family. Colleagues notice when you pack lunch instead of ordering takeout. Friends observe your contentment with older possessions rather than constant upgrades. These quiet demonstrations challenge cultural narratives about spending and success without requiring confrontational conversations. Maya Angelou once said that people forget what you say but remember how you made them feel. This applies perfectly to financial mentoring. Your calm response to unexpected expenses teaches more about financial resilience than any lecture about emergency funds. Your satisfaction with enough teaches more about contentment than discussions about minimalism. The ripple effect of better money stories creates generational change. When you model thoughtful spending, your children carry those lessons to their own families. When you share hard-won wisdom with friends, they pass insights to their networks. Individual transformation multiplies into collective wisdom, one authentic conversation at a time. Start with honesty about your own journey. Share both struggles and successes. Let others see that financial wisdom comes from experience, not perfection. These genuine stories become the foundation for healthier money relationships that extend far beyond your immediate circle. Part 4. Writing your next chapter. When REI announced in 2015 that it would close all stores on Black Friday, encouraging customers to spend time outdoors instead, something remarkable happened. Sales didn't plummet. Customer loyalty soared. The outdoor retailer discovered what many individuals struggle to accept. Sometimes the most powerful financial decision is saying no to more. Your relationship with money doesn't end with implementing better systems or paying off debt. Those achievements mark the beginning of something deeper, a lifetime of choices that reflect who you're becoming rather than who you were. The question isn't whether you've arrived at some financial destination, but whether you're traveling in a direction that aligns with your evolving values and dreams. Consider how Warren Buffett approaches new opportunities. Despite having access to virtually any investment, he says no to 99% of them. His wealth comes not from perfect timing or secret knowledge, but from decades of consistent choices, guided by clear principles. Each decision builds on previous ones, creating compound returns that extend far beyond money. Your next chapter begins with honest reflection about what you've learned from both successes and setbacks. Maybe you discovered that automatic savings removes temptation better than willpower. Perhaps you realized that experiences bring more lasting satisfaction than possessions. Or you found that sharing financial goals with trusted friends creates accountability that transforms intentions into action. These insights become your compass for future decisions. When facing a major purchase, you might ask whether it serves your long-term vision or just satisfies immediate impulses. When considering career changes, you can weigh financial security against personal fulfillment with clearer perspective about what truly matters. The most successful people view money as a tool for creating the life they want, not as validation of their worth. They understand that financial growth happens through small, consistent actions rather than dramatic gestures. They build systems that make good choices easier and bad choices harder. Start by identifying 3 specific behaviors you want to strengthen over the next year. Perhaps you'll automate investment contributions, track spending weekly, or have monthly money conversations with your partner. Write these down and attach them to existing habits. When you brush your teeth, check your account balance. When you pour morning coffee, review yesterday's spending. Remember that setbacks are part of the process, not proof of failure. Markets fluctuate, expenses surprise us, life changes direction unexpectedly. The goal isn't perfection but progress, building resilience that helps you recover quickly and learn from every experience. Your money story continues to unfold with each choice you make. Every dollar spent or saved is a vote for the future you're creating. The power to write that story belongs entirely to you, starting with your very next decision.